So, Jeff, you use New Jersey as an example of the a potential dilemma some Democrats, elected Democrats, may have in the event that Democrats continue to win in states across the country, maybe on a federal level, ultimately too. Why New Jersey? I mean, what is it about New Jersey that is a good maybe? Obviously, it's literal, but it's also a bit of a metaphor.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the story we wrote and published was about how New Jersey Democrats ran on, campaigned on, and promised, and even said that it would be their first priority to pass a millionaire's tax. They had already passed this proposal 5 times under Chris Christie, knowing that Christie would veto it. And now that they have power, now that they have a Democratic governor and one of the most liberal governors in the country eager to sign this bill, they've backed down and said that they don't want to pass it anymore. And they have their reasons and they have their explanations for what has changed in the circumstances of the state. But to me, there's a bigger question raised by the story, which is, if Democrats are not only in the state and local level going to campaign on higher taxes for the rich to pay for the party's increasingly large ambitions on social spending programs, are they going to be willing to raise the taxes to raise the revenue to be able to do that? And I think New Jersey suggests that it might be harder than the campaign trail suggests.
All right. Well, and there's a lot to unpack there, both in terms of, spending on the state level is often different than spending on a federal level. I mean, there's actually, we could break that down a couple of multiple ways, but let's stay in New Jersey for a moment and look at this because you do use it as an explainer for the dynamic, and it's a good one. It's a pretty extreme example in some respects because New Jersey has been, I guess, classically a fairly high tax state, and we're also there's another element to this that is a function of the federal taxes. So let's just start with Phil Murphy. For people who are listening around the country who don't know who Governor Phil Murphy is, give us a sense of who this guy is and what he ran on, because this is a pretty, as far as governors go, Phil Murphy, arguably, if he has the right legislature, could be on the far end of the progressive scale, at least in the context of governors that we have.
Yeah, and I will admit that I had been, I guess wrongly skeptical about the progressive bona fides of Murphy. He's basically a Goldman guy. He spent 3 decades with Goldman Sachs, primarily out of their Hong Kong bureau, and he came back to New Jersey and ran on a platform that was very progressive. And I think a lot of the sort of social justice advocates that I talked to when he was running, a lot of people in New Jersey in the campaign said, are we really going to trust the leader of a progressive wave to be a Goldman Sachs alumnus? And I think he's really shown those doubters, in some respects, myself included, to have been wrong about that. He's not only pushed, the Democratic legislature in New Jersey to enact more liberal spending priorities, but he's actually been successful at doing some things that that the left has long wanted. Just one example, or a few examples. He's passed an equal pay bill for women in the state. He's expanded sick leave in the state. He restored funding for Planned Parenthood. He passed a ban on offshore drilling. His big sort of most ambitious proposals are for universal pre-K in the state and free community college, which are similar, obviously not just to what the left wants nationally, but what Bernie Sanders has said and Clarion call for the left in general.
And this is all in his first year, essentially, right? Yeah.
And it's the stuff he's already done is, if not the most liberal in the country, it's among them. You have Washington State has done a bunch of progressive reforms. New York, Cuomo has been feeling pressure from Cynthia Nixon and has taken some steps to the left. California has been the leader in the forefront of passing clean energy policy, but New Jersey and Murphy would really be are really positioned to be at the very forefront of progressive policy.
And I should add too, I think there's a strong sense that marijuana legalization will come to New Jersey relatively soon. Yes.
That is correct. There's also some skittishness about that, but even still, there's an expectation that within the year, New Jersey is likely to do that.
And I guess the point of this is that you have a governor who is out there who is providing the sort of, I guess, the quintessential 30,000 feet protection, right? I mean, he's out there. He's showing that you can lead in a progressive manner. Where is he in terms of popularity?
He seems very popular in the state among the voters, and he won by a pretty healthy margin. Now, what I think is interesting is that he has begun to rankle some of the rich residents of the state, and in particular, a lot of the lobbyists and a lot of the people who work out of the state capitol. And the question is whether the Democratic, the question to some people might be that whether the Democratic lawmakers in the state legislature will be awed by his popularity or be persuaded to go along with his popular support, or whether these critics of these higher taxes on the rich, who would tend to be affluent and well connected and travel well in these circles, whether they will be able to win and sort of stop some of Murphy's more ambitious proposals.
So, so the issue is that you have a lot of Democrats, and like you said, the legislature sent an approved tax hike on millionaires 5 separate times under Governor Chris Christie. I mean, there's a repeal Affordable Care Act quality to this, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I mean, on a federal,
the dog catching the car.
Indeed. And so, what are those Democratic politicians who were in favor of increasing taxes on millionaires? What are they saying now? If you were to list the top 3 excuses for Democrats as to why they aren't voting to impose these taxes now, what would they be?
Well, so I mean, really, there's one central explanation they have, and that explanation is that the Republican tax law passed in the fall capped the state and local tax deduction, which allowed previously a limitless deduction for people to take off their state and local taxes, and that offered real meaningful relief for a lot of people, particularly in high tax states and localities, New Jersey, New York, California. And you saw when the Republicans were moving forward with their tax law, that when this proposal first emerged to cap the deduction, there was a lot of press, in part because well-to-do journalists in D.C. and New York City were personally affected by this, I think, is fair to say. But there was, a huge degree of alarm that this was going to jack up rates for people in these high tax cities and states, which include New Jersey. And so, the New Jersey lawmakers who are now balking at raising taxes on the rich say that the GOP tax law already amounted to a huge tax increase for these New Jersey residents, and beyond that, New Jersey is already a high tax state. So, if New Jersey is a high tax state, the Republican law increased people's taxes, and now we're going to increase them further, and that sort of allows them to say, rhetorically at least, that taxing the rich will cause flight of millionaires outside the state, that eventually businesses will not want to invest if they know that rich businessmen are going to be taxed at extraordinarily high rates in New Jersey, and that's the explanations they gave, which ironically are actually quite similar to the explanations Chris Christie gave for not wanting to sign the tax hikes under his administration. He also said that it would be dangerous to raise taxes to such a degree that rich people would flee the state. Now, I think the critical question here, and one that I talked to tax experts a lot about, is, how legitimate of an excuse is that?
All right. Well, look, Jeff, let's take a break here, and we'll discuss that on the other side, because this has been a perennial argument about raising taxes, that you will have flight of capital. It will go to these folks in New Jersey. They won't move to New York because it's a high state tax. Maybe they'll move to, I don't know, to Pennsylvania or to maybe to Delaware or greener pastures. When we come back, we'll talk about the validity of that claim and more.
I think every pasture is greener than New Jersey.
Well, all right. Fair enough. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Jeff Stein from the Washington Post. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.